right, everyone. This is something that we should have done a long time ago. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking, yes, Ohio State football live. I bring on Tony Gerdeman on a regular basis, Steve Hellwagon, Claire Crawford, but this is like heaven. I've got all three of them at the same time. This is amazing. I'm going to go grab a cold beverage, and I can just let you three talk Ohio State football, and I'll just listen and learn. This is what it's all about. Tony, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be joined by everybody.
Absolutely. Tony Gerdeman from theozone.net. Please join him and the rest of the staff there. Mr. Steve Hellwagon, much acclaimed and esteemed Big Ten senior writer there at 247 Sports Bucknuts, and Buckeye Claire Crawford. And Claire, if we get around to naming this show, which I hesitate to do right now, it's just Ohio State Buckeyes Live. I would never steal that name, but I just want to set you up to explain to people your former podcast, and this just being the best name that I could ever imagine.
So I might need clearance from Tony, and one other guy who is the most important person to get clearance from would be Joe Dexter. But I may be okay if I think about it long and hard. I love Oh Hail No. I just think it's perfection. So I wouldn't blame you if we ended up taking on that moniker.
No. It will live in infamy. Let it rest. It has its legacy. And we will go with something else at some point. So again, our much acclaimed panel here each and every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time. This is edition number 1. So we talk college football even in May here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So lock it right in. I'm going to hit you guys with a sledgehammer. I warned you before we started to record. Should Ryan Day have been the hire at The Ohio State University to replace Urban Meyer? I know he's a great up-and-coming head coach, but is he heavy enough for this job right now at this age? Steve?
Great question, Mark. I'm going to say yes from the standpoint of, first of all, just how great the offense has been with him at the helm the last year or two. And I think that Urban Meyer obviously had a hand in this decision, I think, in convincing Gene Smith that this is the direction that it should have gone. And I think that the idea that they were able, not only just Ryan Day and the rest of the coaches, able to maintain the infrastructure with the likes of Mark Pantoni in recruiting and Mickey Marotti in strength and conditioning and Brian Voltolini in charge of operations and everybody else. I mean, the only face that they're missing over there right now is Urban Meyer. Well, they're also missing Greg Schiano and Billy Davis and a couple of the others that didn't come back this year. But I think continuity was what they were going for, and I think they got that in spades with Ryan Day. Remains to be seen whether he's going to be the next national championship head coach at Ohio State or not. But he's been left the keys to a very impressive sports car. And now we're going to see if he can keep it up on the road and win the race.
Tony?
I thought it was interesting at the time. We would, maybe you and I have even talked about this, about Ohio State is a place where you seemingly can go get almost whoever you want, but there weren't really a lot of names out there that would seem to fit what Ohio State wants, what they do. And Urban Meyer wouldn't have stepped down if he didn't have Ryan Day there. And so if there was no Ryan Day, I think it would still be Urban Meyer. And despite the headaches and despite the stresses and all of that, it was a good time for him to step down because of Urban Meyer. And he would always use the Bob Stoops, Lincoln Riley example as one that worked out for Bob Stoops. And Urban Meyer and Bob Stoops are very close. They talk a lot. And I'm sure throughout their talks, they would talk about, did Bob Stoops have any regrets? Did he, what did he miss? And Urban Meyer was able to leave Ohio State in the hands of somebody that he trusted, somebody that, as Steve said, the infrastructure remains. And that was the defensive staff needed to be changed. What didn't need to be changed was everything you don't see. And that's where a lot of the stability comes from. Even the things like Real Life Wednesdays, where the after football programs is as much a part of this football program now as some of the coaches. And yeah, this is still the path that Urban Meyer created, and the best guy for that path, I think, is Ryan Day. Is he the best guy for Ohio State? I think you don't want to change what's been going on. So I guess the answer would be yes.
Claire, I apologize. It took me all of about 42 seconds to make a big blunder on our maiden voyage, and I should have went ladies first.
Oh,
I apologize.
It's
Step right in now.
Right. Calling me a lady is kind of like, that's kind of a stretch. So I'll take going last after these veterans ahead of me. So yeah, I think, obviously hindsight is 2020, but Ohio State fans at least were able to see what Ryan Day was able to do as an interim coach. And I don't think anyone had any expectation of Greg Schiano staying around, not only after he wasn't named interim coach during Urban Meyer's suspension, but it wasn't the first time he was overlooked for that position. So, I think that you and I talked about, and I'm glad Tony mentioned it, the Lincoln Riley example, but there are several other young up and coming coaches that are of that mold. The guys like Lincoln Riley and PJ Fleck and even Tom Herman is relatively young, not necessarily directly from the culture. Lincoln Riley, I think, is still the best example of that, Tony. But it's time for the new generation of coaches to step up. And like you mentioned, Tony, there wasn't really any big name out there and available. I don't love the idea of someone coming from the NFL to then transition into college football. It's just a different game, a different sport, and it's usually a failed experiment. It rarely ever works out, and vice versa. I mean, Greg Schiano can explain to you how both of those things work, but it definitely is. It's going to be an interesting experiment, but I think culture is the most important thing that Ryan Day brings to the table.
Urban Meyer won 91% of his games at Ohio State. He's like the third best winning percentage of all time. He has the best winning percentage of all time if we're just watching,
Correct.
Colored film videotape, not Newt Rockney, Frank Leahy, and the like from Notre Dame. Those are the two guys that surpass him in winning percentage all time. It's just crazy. So what's the standard going to be to evaluate Ryan Day, Tony? What could that possibly be?
Well, first I'll correct you. Ryan Day has the highest winning percentage in college football history at a perfect 1,000. So first, put that in your record books.
As does Cardell Jones as a quarterback.
Exactly. So in terms of like the expectations for this year is what you're asking, or like the baseline, or
yeah, what let's say he hangs around for 8 or 10 years.
Mhm.
What would be a good run at Ohio State after this? And Jim Tressel.
Well, exactly. I would say between Tressel and Urban Meyer, you can't expect to match or surpass Urban Meyer. But if you can avoid a couple of 8-4s or a 7-5 like Jim Tressel had, I think you can wedge yourself in there between Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. And I think taking over for Urban Meyer, you're getting the program at a level that maybe no other coach has ever received it. So in that frame, I think it's okay to expect a higher winning percentage than Jim Tressel. It's just a matter of, can he win a national title like Jim Tressel, like Urban Meyer, and would one national title be a disappointment? Only one. Is only one from Urban Meyer a disappointment? Is only one from Jim Tressel a disappointment? When you look at how close they both got, and when you give Ryan Day this program at this time, would only one in say 7 or 8 years be a disappointment as well?
Tony, you stole what popped into my head about 12 seconds before you mentioned it in regards to a follow-up question. But Steve, we'll let you take this one on in regards to what we can possibly expect of Ryan Day, what's realistic, but also going to meet the expectations?
Well, I think first of all, everything starts with recruiting, and Ryan Day, it's been a pretty successful run so far as the head coach. They held on to Zach Harrison from here in Ohio. They're going to try and hold on to Paris Johnson from Cincinnati, one of the top offensive linemen out of the Midwest in the last 10 years. And he was at a combine recently, put up just some amazing numbers. Could be another, I would never say this, but another Orlando Pace type, because there's ever only going to be one Orlando Pace, but somebody on that similar type trajectory that could be just a mainstay offensive lineman for you. So that's going to be the proof in the pudding, is can he keep Ohio's best players at home? Can he win with the talent? And certainly when you think about the history of Ohio State football, Meyer was the coach.
Steve has been silenced, hopefully momentarily.
It's the dark web. They have enough.
Claire, I will let you pick it up from there. You, of course, need to know exactly what Steve was going to say to finish his comment.
There's no way. No, I think that the expectation is always going to be high at Ohio State, and it should be. I've had many a conversation about this, mainly with Michigan fans. The expectation at Michigan should be high, no matter what, no matter who steps in. And obviously, Urban set the bar high from the moment he got there. But eventually, Urban wasn't always, quote, Urban. He stepped in, and that 2012 team had something to prove. And I think that this 2019 squad is going to be have a similar mentality. And that's only going to help Ryan Day, I think. I think coaches in general that have teams that are hungry and are wanting to prove people wrong. I think the media, and we talked a little bit about it before, Mark, the media is underestimating, I think, this team. And that's not just me being a homer. I think this is me just really digging into the potential of what this team can do and maybe being an optimist. I certainly believe that having a hungry team at your helm for your maiden voyage, to steal a term from Mark, is really going to help Ryan Day out. So yeah, the expectations should be high. And I don't think that a national championship on Ryan Day's resume is going to disappoint anyone.
Steve, the internet got in your way.
Am I live now?
You are back with us.
I'll say it quickly. Tressel had 3 12-win seasons. Meyer had that 6 times in 7 years. Just an unbelievable run. And comparing Tressel to whatever came after, it's kind of an apples and oranges thing, because now you have to win the Big Ten championship game to win the conference, which is another layer that they've put in there. Also, to win a national championship, you got to win a semifinal game. So that's another layer that they've put in there. But at any rate, going to be a hard act to follow. Let's just say that.
I don't know how many people comment to me that Jim Tressel lost big bowl games all the time. And then I went, whoa, wait a minute. Let's check out the record. That's not accurate. That is not accurate. You're remembering that Florida sledgehammer that came down in 2006. That resonated with so many people.
La, 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 la.
I'm sorry. We got to speak
counted
the truth
like 5
here.
losses. Yeah.
We lay it out there. I'm sorry. 41-14. I said it. Yes. It was a disaster. I think 34 points in the first half, but it's just like, that was like 8 games to College Football Nation. To a lot of people, man, Ohio State could do nothing for 3 or 4 years after that and would only lose a game, win the Big Ten, win a BCS bowl game. And it just was like, oh, they got trounced by Florida. Then they got trounced by LSU. No, Jim Tressel went like 7-3 in BCS bowl games. I might be off by 1 or 2, 5-3, something like that. Yes, he got on a roll in 2005, even after winning the national championship in 2002, and pretty much boom. I know that we've talked about it, Steve. 7-1 is Ohio State's worst. I just think this is unfathomable. Their worst Big Ten season since 2004 is 7-1.
Yeah, they've been on some type of a rampage within the conference. And, what can you say? I mean, the losses that they have are epic and spectacular in nature when you come right down to it. I mean, you think about at Penn State 3 years ago, They had a field goal and a punt blocked. You go forward, Purdue, obviously, this past year, Iowa the year before, it just cataclysmic events. When it does happen, it's a big deal.
Yes, David Greenshield in the live chat, 5-3 Trestle in BCS bowl games. Just give me a second. I will get it right off the top of my head. Just give me a second. I got there.